Hey guys, welcome to today's episode. So I want you to ask yourself a question. In your entire life, where were you the most focused? Where was the environment? When was it? For how long was it? And I'm talking specifically about knowledge work. So where you had to solve a problem or you had to create something from scratch. But try and remember, where was this moment in time where you were at your peak in terms of mental focus and intensity? Have you got the image in your head? I'm guessing that it was either in school or in university when you had to take exams. At least that's where it was for me. I remember in my university days back in Australia, at the end of every single semester, we would have to take this exam to pass the unit. And the exams would go for 3 hours. And if you were really unlucky, you would have 2 a day. So you'd start one at 9 a.m. and then you'd have another one at 2 p.m. Now, of course, I would always put off studying until the final week before the exam. So I'd be cramming for a week straight, but I would go into that exam room and there would be hundreds of other students. And everyone always looked a lot more prepared than me, but we'd all sit down at our little desk. We'd have to put away our phone. There was no distractions. There were no windows. All the curtains were drawn. There was just a clock at the front of the room. And then there were the teachers or the lecturers. They'd be walking around. But it was complete silence except for people's pens moving as they wrote down frantically their essays or their answers. But I remember that environment would put me and it would put everyone in production mode. Now, when I look at my normal office environment, and this is probably the same for you, when you sit down at your desk and you're behind your laptop and you're doing your work, it's completely different. At least for me, I've got multiple tabs open. I've got a very messy desk. I've got my phone. I've got lots of distractions around. And I know I shouldn't have many of these things, but there they are. So things take a lot longer than they should. But let's think about that exam environment. Why does it work so well? Well, first of all, there's no phones. Okay, so that's the big clue. There's no phones, and even if you want to use your phone, even if you want to check WhatsApp or check social media, you can't, because if you get caught with a phone, then you're probably out of there. So you can't have a phone. That's number one. Now, let's say you get hungry and you're tempted to just get up and start walking to the fridge and get yourself a snack. You can't do that. The environment is such that you are forced to focus on what you're doing. And if you have a headache or you don't feel like it and you want to go and take a lay down, you can't do that either. You are stuck there for those 3 hours and you must get the task done. You no longer have a choice. And everyone around you, that entire environment, everyone is doing what you should be doing. And so that helps to get you in that production mode. It is the perfect example, although it is stressful, it is intense, but it is the perfect environment to get you into your peak production mode. Now at the end, someone at the front of the room, they usually will ring a bell, they'll tell you time's up, pen's down, and you're rushing to finish off the essay, but you got to put your pen down, and then you sit back in your chair and you look at everything that you wrote, everything that you got done, and it's pages upon pages. Now, normally, if you think back to those days, if you were trying to write an essay or a report and you had weeks to get it done, normally it would end up taking weeks. You just produced in those 3 hours more than what you would typically get done in days or even weeks. Now, here's my question to you. Imagine if you could do that every single day. Imagine if you could work with that level of output, that level of focus and concentration, even if it was only for 1 hour a day. Even if you could only do it for 30 minutes a day, how much more would you get done? A lot. And this is the secret to all knowledge workers who produce at an extremely high rate. They work in concentrated blocks of time with the one task in front of them and no distractions around. The example I often give is Stephen King, the writer. Now, I haven't read a lot of his books, but I am incredibly impressed with the number of books that he's written. But he gets a lot done. He's one of the most productive authors in the world. But when Stephen King sits down to write, he is fully immersed in the task. He writes every single day, whether it's Christmas, New Year's, his birthday, he writes. Every single day he sits down and he writes, and he only writes. He doesn't have his phone nearby. He doesn't have visitors coming by. He has complete silence. He has this desk. He has this laptop that he works at. He's fully in that production mode with the same intensity as a student who's sitting in a 3-hour exam. That's his secret to churning out so many books. Now, years ago, I decided that I wanted to write my own book, and I'd been putting it off for many, many years. But I decided one day that, you know what, I'm going to get the first draft of my book done, and I'm going to get this done in a weekend. It was this big, ambitious goal, but I declared that I was going to do it publicly. So what I did is I went on Facebook and I announced to my audience, I said, I'm going to write a book in 30 hours, okay? And the way it's going to work is I'm going to go to a hotel, I'm going to work in 1 hour blocks, I'm going to check in on Friday, I'm going to write all day Friday, Saturday, Sunday in 1 hour blocks, 30 hours total, and I'm going to get my very first draft of a book done. And that's what I did. I remember it clearly. I was in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. I went to a hotel, and it was one of the hardest things that I have ever done, because when you're sitting there for an hour, you want to check your phone, you want to distract yourself, you want to get pulled into different directions and do all that kind of busy work. But what I did is I put my phone in the safe. I didn't have any Wi-Fi. I told them in the reception, don't give me any Wi-Fi, I don't want the password. And I worked with a timer. So I would work in 1 hour blocks, and after each hour, I would cross off a line through that time range, and that was done. And I tried to average 10 hours a day. On the last day, I had to do something like 12, 13, 14 hours, but I got it done. I wrote 60,000 words. It wasn't brilliant, but it was good enough. And that draft later became my very first, and only up until this point, book. And the secret was replicating that exam environment as much as I could, and then just working in those 1 hour blocks. So for you, here's what I want you to do if you really want to put this into practice. Start allocating a period of time each day. It doesn't have to be a lot. It could be 30 minutes. It could be an hour. But start with something small that you can begin with. 30 minutes, and have a set time every single day. So that might be 9 to 9:30 a.m. But during that time range, you go somewhere where you don't have all your distractions. So probably not your office, because you've got papers around, you've got things on the wall, but go somewhere where you just got your laptop, or you just got a pen and a piece of paper. The one thing in front of you. No Wi-Fi, just turn off all your Wi-Fi, and just for that 30-minute period, focus on the one task and try and work like you did when you were taking an exam. Focus on the highest leverage work that you possibly can. And if you will do that, you'll get more done in those 30 minutes than you might normally get done in 3 hours or 5 hours of your day. So that's what I do. If I know I've got a deadline and I've got something really important I need to get done, I work in 1 hour blocks, and I go somewhere else and I just remove all my distractions. So that's it for today. Hope you get some value out of that, and I'll see you tomorrow.